All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Connections, where I just simply interview high performance folks. And this is the LinkedIn show. So, welcome, Jeff. How are you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. What's cooking?
Just another day enjoying what I do, and I'm blessed and fortunate to do what I love. Like it's so important. It sounds cliche, but it's not. It's so important, in my opinion, and a lot of folks' opinion, to do what they love. Let's start at a high level, and we'll get into some of the specifics. As I've like we mentioned before we jumped on, I've been following you for a while and just watching your career moves and your growth as an entrepreneur and as a personality. But let's start high level and say what motivates you to get out of bed, and where do you find this, like, what seems like internal energy, and what's the first thing that's on Jeff's mind every morning?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, like every entrepreneur, how am I going to make my next dollar? Right. And it's interesting. It's no matter how we had our best year ever last year. And every day I woke up, how am I going to make the next dollar? And I knew, right. But it's that little, we were just talking about Elon Musk. And I remember he had a quote. I'm going to jack it up, but you may know. But he said, what advice or motivation can you give an entrepreneur? And his response was, if you need it, you're not an entrepreneur. Right.
I like it.
So it's this fire inside of me that just feels like I'm losing every day.
Mhm.
Right. Even when I win, I have this thing where I don't celebrate my wins and I don't get pissed about my losses.
Mhm.
I just stay even. So to answer your question, the first thing on my mind every day is, all right, what am I going to do better today?
Mhm.
And where, not the income I already know I have coming in. Where am I going to go find another stream, another client, another customer? How am I going to, grow this thing every day? I'm old school. I got 50,000 notepads. I get here around 6:37 and I just write down, kind of the notes of what are we doing today? How are we doing it? And that shit never leaves my head, all day, every day.
You brought up, like, just a thought in my mind too, is that I'm under the belief that too many of us, I think school teaches us and trains us to, like, think of ourselves as like, I did an accounting degree, so I'm an accountant, and that's it, right? And then just kind of come out like, and then just stay in that lane. And to me, that's like a mental box that we put around ourselves. Entrepreneurs obviously tend to break that mold. That they don't like to say I'm this or that. They like to just feel like they're in a lot of different things. I have a lot of different interests. I have a lot of different passions and hobbies and things that make me income and whatnot. How important is that for you, being in, like, the entrepreneurship space? Because you could say you're an author, you're a media personality, you're a recruitment specialist, you run your own business, you're an executive, you're a CEO. But how much of that mindset stuff goes into really just how you have you always been like that, and then how important is that for other
Yeah.
people to think,
And
for
I
other
gotta
people to
be
think like
honest,
that?
I don't know the right answer. I've been fortunate enough to be around guys like Gary Vaynerchuk, who has a whole, I see some of the stuff he says as,
Mhm.
crazy. Hey, like you said, hey, if you got a passion, he'll tell you to go live in a cardboard box
Right.
until you make it. And I get that mentality. That's
Right.
the mentality he has.
Right.
But trust me, you don't want to go live in a cardboard box, right? Then there's the other side of that. I don't know if you're born with it or not,
Mhm.
but I've always had it.
Mhm.
Always had it. Always got up, wanted to hustle. People say, "Oh, you're from New York." It's not. It's something that you either want to conquer and kick everyone's ass in a polite way,
Right.
or you're just okay. 9 to 5. Let me take my check. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. The first
Right.
thing I tell people is so I'm doing a pretty big deal with Towson University.
Mhm.
I'm donating 6 figures to start a whole leadership program for the people that are going to school because they're told they have to, but they
Right.
really want to be entrepreneurs.
Right.
Right. But there's the other side of it that you don't have to be an entrepreneur. I had a great living for 15 years, at a W-2 company. So it's this weird thing where there's people that don't have it inside of them,
Mhm.
but they follow YouTube and Instagram. So they have to be an entrepreneur,
Right.
right? But they physically, mentally don't have, the 8 inches between your ears that will either make you or break you. And then
Mhm.
there's entrepreneurs that actually have it, but they just want to be comfortable. And, so
Yeah.
it's a rare breed. And you hear the stories. You have to be, it's the loneliest place to be in the world and the greatest, right?
Mhm.
When things are good and your phone's ringing off the hook and you're featured in every news article, great, right? Every friend calls me.
Right.
But they don't know when you're sitting here saying, "Oh shit, how am I going to make my next dollar?"
Right.
Right. And now we're big enough where I don't really have that worry, but I do. How am I going to
Right.
make more money? How am I going to keep it going? COVID hit. Oh shit, what do we do?
Right.
So I just think that mentality is, I don't know if it's just, you're born with it or not, but it's a tough one.
Mhm.
And mentality is everything in this game.
I like what you said too, is that you don't have to. I think it's just like people, people have accused, I've been following Gary Vaynerchuk for a while, accused him of like the hustle porn. If you really listen to his deep analysis, he's not just like a motivational speaker. He is saying like, do what you like. And that's fine if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, but you're right. There is this like everyone doesn't have to strive to have like all these different things going on and whatnot. I think that's an important nuance. But for folks that are say, hey, I mean, because you're in the recruitment business, you work with people that are looking for a job or a new career, or you're connecting companies with individuals that you think maybe have specific talent. What are you saying, or what are you saying to the folks? Or rather, what are you seeing the folks making the mistake of when they're looking for a new career? Maybe they're tired of where they've been for 10 years. Is there any commonality that you see like time and time after again that people fall trap to?
Yeah, I don't know. What I do is I try to slow them down a little bit.
Okay.
And I really dissect. I do this every day. Okay. Why don't you want to be there? Mm-hmm. Right. You said you have a passion for it. You love it. Right. Mm-hmm. So is it the company? Is it your day to day? And a lot of people, they'll call and be like, oh, I got, I hate recruiting. I got to get out of it. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Or do you hate the company you're at? Right. So what we do is we break it down. I go day to day. What are you doing? What do you love? What don't you love? And there's some cases that people are just in a miserable company that makes their life not fun. So guess what? They hate that industry. Well, you really don't hate that industry, right? You hate the people you're working for. So that's probably the most common thing when someone calls and says, get me out of here. I've been doing this for 10 years. I hate it.
Right.
There's an element of, are you burnt out? And how do we recharge you? Or do you really hate it? And 99% of the time, they're burnt out, not having fun at work, right? There's a difference of, loving what you do, which I think we all should, but also having fun at work, right? And when I say having fun at work, I don't mean happy hours and fucking around all day. Right. I mean, like when you go to work, okay, cool. I'm not dreading it. Right. There's people that dread walking into work or logging in. So you got to figure that out. And what I tell a lot of people is, look, if you got 5, 6, 10, 20 years, right, you're going to take a major step back to go forward. Right. So, is it, again, where you work and who you work for, or do you really just hate what you do?
Making them define what it is.
99% of the time, they actually love the industry. They just not plugged into it the right way. Right. I have lawyers that come to me that love law, but they hate being in law in the courtroom. But if I said, hey, how would you love recruiting lawyers so you could be in that world? Right. They love that. Right. Okay, great. Right. Or some people just hate where they're at. Right. And it's not the career, it's your surroundings. And all of a sudden that changes, and it's hard being remote and at home, and people aren't connected, and they're not doing, I say the happy hours as much as the Gary V's would say. If you go to happy hour, that's bullshit, right? At the end of the day, you got to have fun. Right. And I think a lot of people now are going through this loneliness on an island, where my best friends were the guys I grew up with at the first place I worked for 15 years. I loved going to work to see them. Now, where it's all screwy, is you get up, you put your shirt on for your Zoom calls, you got your shorts on, and you're all by yourself.
All right. That's what I keep thinking about too. Like how much of companies are going to go back to quote unquote normal. I'm a firm believer that I don't think that ever is the case. I think we're going to just evolve into a hybrid version of this remote life. But I mean, from a digital, like from a digital networking perspective, I know you're big on LinkedIn. You believe on having a presence on LinkedIn. Should everyone have a professional or just personality when it comes to social media for business purposes, in your opinion?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
And it really honestly depends on what you do. Right. But my short answer, quick answer is yes. Right. I'm the biggest LinkedIn fan. I put thousands of people through free LinkedIn training.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some people that don't need to network.
Right.
They're happy and they don't get on it. They're not active on it. Right. So, it all depends. The answer is yes. It's your website. It's your personal brand,
Mm-hmm.
right? Obviously, the salespeople, the business professionals, guys like you that are out there trying to get clients are going to be a lot more active on it than someone that's, an accountant for a big firm and they don't need to go find work, right?
Right.
The downside to those people where they make their mistake of, I don't need it. You don't need it till you need it. And that's whether you hate work
Right.
or you get laid off. Now, all of a sudden, you don't have a brand,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what I tell people is, hey, you may not need it to make a living, right? But you won't need it until you need it, and then you're screwed because you haven't built a brand. So let's say I'm an accountant,
Mm-hmm.
and I keep up to date. It looks good. I got a great, picture, and every once in a while, I'm putting out a tip of the day. Right. Well, yeah, that takes time, but it takes 10 minutes, right? A week. If I ever get laid off or need another job, there's a whole audience of already who knows who I am. And they're probably reaching out to me weekly. And I could just say, no, not yet, not yet. But when I'm ready, sometimes it's an emergency and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you get laid off. Sometimes you hate where you're at. The people that have a presence and use it and update it are getting jobs. They have jobs lined up before they need them.
Right. They've got relationship currency, and they have a deck of people that can help them if they do.
So the answer is yes, but I understand why a guy or a girl, right? I understand why somebody may say, why do I need that? I get it, but they don't get it.
Right. Well, I think there is some nuance there that you don't have to be like an entertainer or create content. It's just simply staying connected, like you mentioned, with people that you don't ever know. Like if 5 or 10 people, maybe they don't like or engage with my post, but they're keeping an eye on what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden, if I'm in a new role or maybe that I'm on the quote unquote market for a new job, they're going to say, hey, I know that guy. I've developed, an understanding of his values and missions and, what that sort of thing.
And I'll say this, if you are in the business of getting business, whether that's companies or people or networking or, whether you're a lawyer, right? Like there's the majority, you're crazy not to be on there.
Right.
Crazy. I don't care if you're working for Cintas selling uniforms to companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, what am I going to do on there? Are you kidding me? That's where it's people are crazy. And they just don't understand. I'll put people through a training and they're just like, they can't even speak when it's over because, everyone is so used to Facebook and Instagram that all they hear is social and think it's all the same.
Right.
It's not even close.
Yeah, each platform is contextual. I mean, or understanding how to navigate on each platform. Now, at a certain point, though, and I've heard you speak about this before. I think a lot of folks, or especially like related to LinkedIn, they put up this like facade of professionalism and what they think, is what is the most attractive and most like basically middle of the road kind of opinions and takes on stuff. You have no problem expressing your own, personal opinion, very, whether it's strongly in this favor or that favor. Do you think is it the benefit of really showing who you are on social media? Does the pros outweigh the cons, at least in your experience, of not being afraid to?
For me, it does. Some people do have to be careful, though, right? I mean, I think I've toned it down a little bit, but everyone wants a crazy guy on their side when it comes to growing their team and recruiting, right? But does everyone want a crazy guy or girl on their team when it comes to that person being, my rep for software. Like so for me, yes. Right now, there is a way you can do that, right, and keep it professional. Because I have people that call all the time like, man, I wish I could do what you do. I'd be fired in a heartbeat. Right. I'm like, really? Like, have you asked? Like, you're really going to get fired, right? So it all depends, but some people can't do it. I mean, I know recruiting firms that if they went on rants like I do, which are typically to help people, they will get fired. Right. And you know what that is? That's the companies not understanding that here's where the companies have an issue. Is that you're not talking about the company, you're building your brand. Well, what people don't realize is people don't follow companies, they follow people. Right. So if I work for a corporate company and I'm a W-2, but I'm getting on talking about recruiting, yeah, I am building my brand, but that's going to trickle into your company. Right. And they get all defensive of, you're building your own shit. You're doing your side hustle. No, I'm not. This is how I do business. Right. So I think the majority of companies that look down on that, right, they just don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, because if, I do this obviously professionally, director of communications for Centurion Wealth Management, but then on the side, I've got a podcast called Mountaineer Media where I interview influential West Virginians. I'm from West Virginia. That in turn elevates me just because of general exposure. I meet more people. I know CEOs. I'm having conversations with, like we said, like back to the LinkedIn thing, you never know when that relationship might pay off. So not everything is directly do it and it strictly accomplishes a professional task within your lane. Life is a little bit more dynamic and if you create a belief in an ecosystem around you where you're well connected, that tends to help over the long term.
Yeah, there's people I'll talk to that are like, hey, I was on with someone who sells private aviation, right? But their passion was this charity, and that's what they love to talk about. And I just say, what brand do you want to build, right? You're either the best in the business of, you can't have two out there, right? I mean, you could talk about both, right? But there's some people that have a side hustle that can't go on there because then the company will flip out. So, right. I'm very lucky that I get, first of all, I own the company, right? So that always changes shit. But it's acceptable in what I do. I work with more financial advisors than you could imagine, right? They wish they can get on and do what I do, right? They'd be, thrown out of the office in a heartbeat. Right. So I'm very lucky. And there's a lot of other people that fall into this boat that the way I conduct business and do business is acceptable and appreciated in the staffing world. Calling out people, stop doing this bullshit. You're doing this wrong, right? People are like, oh, wow, this is refreshing. He's calling out the industry. He's teaching people how to find jobs. Some industries don't look at it that way. That doesn't mean you can't have a page and be professional. Right. It just means you may not want to grab the camera and curse everyone out and then post it.
Well, let me just transition back because a lot of the folks that I like mentoring. Back at my college, West Virginia University, a lot of college students, they always ask me, career advice, how to navigate and whatnot. What would you say to if I'm the hypothetical 22-year-old that just came out and sees like we said, sees an influencer culture, sees entrepreneurship, maybe is a little bit overwhelmed by that, trying to figure out like where do you feel like if you're speaking to an uncertain 22-year-old, what are you talking to them about? I know that's a hard question, but like it's.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I'm giving an answer. Probably people, I say, go get a job, go get a W-2 job. Right. And figure it out. Now that sounds shitty, right? Like, oh, well, you're telling him to go take a job, but his heart may not be into it. Yeah, but you need to work.
You need money.
Like cut the shit. Like you need to go work, right? And there you may discover yourself. My first job out of college, I turned them down. First, because I was used to being outside and I didn't want to be in an office. I went back a year later and I stopped beating myself up now, but the amount of times that I'm like, holy shit, I lost a year, right? So, if you get that person that thinks they want to be an entrepreneur because it's cool, right? The first thing I say is, what's the idea? Right? Like, is it like, I don't want to say, I don't want to call anyone's idea stupid, but is that a business or you just want to be on Shark Tank because it's cool?
Right.
Right. And a lot of times they don't have a business, right? And you hear it on Shark Tank. They're like, this isn't a business, it's a hobby. You better go get a job. So instead of going the Gary V route, find what you love, sleep in your parents' house, I'm more of the Grant Cardone side, right? And I've had a pleasure working with him where he's like, go to work and you'll figure it out, right? You'll figure it out. Now, what I do tell people is if you're working 9 to 5 and company XYZ is paying you, you better hustle between 9 to 5. Figure the other shit out when you're out of work, right? Don't, if whoever's paying you needs to get all the attention and that job better be done right. But then you can figure it out from 6 to 9 and from 6 to midnight. Right. And then I always say when the scale tilts, right? If I'm doing something on the side that is not affecting my drive at work, it's not affecting the company. So I don't feel shitty that I'm doing something when I'm out of work, which everyone does. If all of a sudden, the second that I start making money on, you call it the side hustle, right? Then you have to go all in and then you got to choose one. Right. There's really no such thing in the middle. And the people that sit on the fence, they get killed, right? Because you either got to go all in, give it a shot. But, I'm very realistic that going all in without having revenue, you're not going to last a month. Right? What are you going to do?
Right.
So you got to have revenue coming in from a real job and then investing that into your side. And as soon as that side job, hustle, passion, whatever you want to call it, starts to generate dollars, once it's sort of even, then you get rid of one and you go focus on the other.
That makes perfect sense.
But I tell them, go get a job.
Right. Now, coming out of COVID, what are you most optimistic about? I mean, if you're fortunate enough to folks listening that you've dodged COVID, maybe financially you're okay. What do you think, at least you personally, what are you most optimistic about coming out of this strange year that we've had?
I don't know when this is going to happen, but eventually, we spoke on it earlier. I'm talking to more and more CEOs that are so sick of being remote. Right now, I do agree. I think there's going to be a lot. I mean, Google announced, they said everyone's coming back. This is the date. You don't want to come back, don't work here. Right. There's going to be a lot of companies like that. There's going to be a lot of hybrid, but I think the market, I don't know when. I think maybe I kept saying August, September-ish is going to go effing bananas. Bananas. These companies, we thought it was going to be, okay, we're going to lay you off, take you back. I mean, these companies have laid off everybody, right? And eventually when shit gets back to normal and it turns, they're going to have to rehire. So I'm very optimistic. I hope it's before then, but I think fall time I think more people finally going to be out on the street, knocking on doors, coming in, can I sell you something versus Zoom calls.
Right.
And that's going to help the job market. It's going to help people, I think productivity. What happened was everyone went home for COVID and all you heard about was, oh my God, why didn't we do this 10 years ago? Numbers are through the roof. 9 months later, numbers were in the gutter, right? And it wasn't because they were through the roof because people were at home and they were more productive. They were scared shitless of losing their job. So they worked harder. They also had nowhere else to go. Everything was closed. If you're inside, I might as well work. Right. And now you're seeing this dip where people don't feel connected. They're quitting jobs without having another job because they want to go find a place where they can be around other people. So I'm most excited about eventually it has to turn. It's been over a year of the worst job market ever. And every month you see the numbers get better. So I think come fall time, it's going to be insane.
The roaring 20s is kind of what people that have been thrown around. Hopefully so. I mean, that sounds like an optimistic thing to look forward to.
It'll eventually have to, right? It'll eventually have to.
Well, look, Jeff, like told you, I keep it 30 minutes. Thanks, man. I appreciate you jumping on. I mean, I think you dropped a lot of good nuggets, and keep doing what you're doing. I know you light a fire under a lot of people, whether they directly work with you or follow you like I have for the last couple of years. So I certainly appreciate hearing your take on it today here on Coffee with Connections.
You got it, brother. If you need anything, just give me a holler. Good seeing you.